Start.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to wait for a few minutes to see if Scott's there?
Okay.
No. Mm-hmm.
He's always like just in time.
Sorry, still loading. Okay, we're on now.
Okay. I guess I will begin then. This meeting of the Sunnyvale Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission is called to order at 6:31 p.m. on the 17th of June, 2021. Before we get started, I'd like to remind the commissioners of some procedural items for this meeting. During this meeting, commissioners and participants should remain muted when not speaking. If commissioners or participants have a question or comment, please use the raise hand feature. Speakers will be called upon to speak one at a time. A random order voice vote will be administered by the city staff for each vote. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission meeting is being conducted utilizing teleconferencing and electronic means consistent with the state of California Executive Orders N2920 and N0821 regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Members of the public may provide audio public comment by connecting to the teleconference meeting online or by telephone. Use the raise hand feature to request to speak online or *9 on the telephone. Automatically generated captions are available to viewers accessing this meeting via Zoom. Captions can be displayed or hidden using the live transcript button. Teleconference meeting details are available on the BPAC meeting agenda. Comments on matters not on the agenda must be submitted prior to the time the chair calls the item for oral communications. Comments on agenda items must be submitted prior to the time that the chair closes the public meeting on the agenda item. Speakers are requested to keep their comments to no more than 3 minutes, and time limits will be enforced. Guidelines are posted on the Sunnyvale Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission meeting agenda. Roll call. Staff, may we please have the roll call?
Commissioner Haveman?
Present.
Vice Chair Melman, or Acting Chair Melman?
Present. Okay, give me time to swallow.
Commissioner Dave?
Here.
Commissioner Swale?
Present.
Commissioner Owie?
Present.
Both Chair Mellinger and Commissioner Cordes are absent tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe they are both, this is the first absence they have this year, so they should be both excused, but I will double check.
Well, it's the second absence for Commissioner Mellinger, but it's an excused one. So as far as I'm aware, because he did notify us in advance, Commissioner Cordes, it's the first absence I can recall in recorded history working with it in my brain. So, all right, at this point, we would begin with oral communications and a reminder to the public. Please raise your digital hand or dial *9 on a telephone if you wish to address the BPAC on a topic that is not on tonight's agenda. City staff will ask you to unmute your microphone when it is your turn to address the BPAC.
Acting Chair,
did I miss?
We're going to be starting with presentation first.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the script and I didn't see a presentation. You know, I was going for oral. Okay, so do we have a presentation, staff?
Let's see. So tonight we have 3 different presentations. The first,
okay. There we go.
The first one is recognition of services.
Mm-hmm.
So we're coming close. We're coming to an end for this fiscal year, and 2 commissioners will be leaving BPAC after the end of this month.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Swale will be leaving after this term, and he has served on the BPAC for 1 term starting in 2017. Commissioner Cordes, who's not present tonight, he will also be leaving BPAC after this year, and he has served almost 2 years. So this will be for a total of 7 years.
Wow.
He started serving on the BPAC in 2014, and he was the chair for BPAC for 2 different years and the vice chair for 1 year. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank both of them for their services and their contribution to the bicycle and pedestrian community, and to City of Sunnyvale and their continuous dedication to enhance Sunnyvale streets as complete streets.
I concur. I would certainly add my thanks to you, Scott, for serving us so ably for your time on the commission, and for having thoughtful and considered, comments on many of the issues that have come up before the commission. And certainly Commissioner Cordes has been a driving force on this BPAC for as long as I've been on it, and outside the BPAC as well. And so yes, I will add my kudos to you both for your service, and we'll miss you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
And did
It's been a
anyone else
pleasure to
switch?
serve.
I was going to say, I do see a panel. Sorry, I'm like switching view. I see one panelist with a raised hand, but it's not showing up as to who. Okay, Commissioner Wee, you wish to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you to Commissioner Swale for great service, and I hope to see you on our street periodically as I bike up and down with you by your house. And I will dearly miss Commissioner Cordes. He has been a huge asset to Sunnyvale and to this commission with his very deep knowledge of bicycling and bicycling infrastructure and bicycling laws. Yeah, so I wish him well on his journeys wherever he goes, because now he's adventuring in retirement. Thank you.
Is it permissible for any members of the public to speak on this or not?
It is, because it is on the public. It is on the agenda.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do any members of the public wish to speak? Since I don't see any further raised. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Dave. Now I see your raised hand. The chair recognizes Commissioner Dave.
I just wanted to appreciate how both Commissioner Cordes and Commissioner Swales did their homework and would do the research, the heavy lifting. And now I have to stop being a slacker and do it myself. I can't. I really appreciated the thoroughness with which they came prepared to each meeting, and I wish you would stay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dave. Now, do any members of the public wish to speak on the recognition of the terms of service for Commissioner Swale and Commissioner Cordes? Nope. Okay, seeing, I don't believe that we have any members of the public indicating they wish to speak on this. So I will close public comment on this, and we will proceed to the next item, which is the presentation on the introduction to the Java Drive Road Diet and Bicycle Lanes Project, item 210668.
So tonight, Angela Obiso, Principal Transportation Engineer with the City of Sunnyvale, and Joe Strapper, Project Manager from Mark Thomas, will provide an introduction to the Java Drive Road Diets and Bicycle Lanes project.
We have a presentation for you, so Lillian is bringing that up. I'll just start introducing myself. Again, my name is Angela Obiso. I'm here, Principal Transportation Engineer with the City of Sunnyvale, and with me tonight is Joe Streeper, Project Manager of our consultant team at Mark Thomas. When we get to the end of the presentation, we also have a couple more team members, Jerry Tran with Mark Thomas, and Nikita Petrov with Kimberly Horn, who would be available for question and answer. We also have Transportation and Traffic Manager Dennis Ng with us tonight to help with any questions you may have. So,
and then
there we go. And will I have control?
Oh, control. Yes, hold on a second. I have shared my control with you.
Okay. There we go. So tonight, just a brief agenda. We'll be talking about the project background to give you an introduction, show you some existing conditions, show you the proposed options that we're currently studying, and some of the traffic analysis summary that we've performed so far. And then we'll show you next steps and a timeline of where do we go from here. So first, we will talk about background. If I can get the slide. There we go. So the project is on Java Drive in the Moffett Park specific plan area. The limits run from Matilda to Crossman. And this map here shows you how, you see 101 and 237 to the south, to the bottom. And then to the north, you see the bay. It's right there kind of in the core of the Moffett Park area. And the project has quite a history. In 2006, it was included in our city's bicycle plan as a vital bicycling route through the Moffett Park area and connecting the Moffett Park area. It's also included in our active transportation plan, which was approved last summer as a future class 4 bikeway. Also connects to light rail and jobs in the area. And as you may be aware, the Moffett Park specific plan is currently going through an effort to update. And so the land uses and the roadway network in that area will be changing in the future. And so this will help support some of the multimodal improvements that will come as part of that effort. We also, once we identified the project, we applied for and received a One Bay Area grant to move the project into environmental design and construction. And generally the project proposes to add about 10,000 feet of bicycle lanes, and that's 5,000 feet in each direction. Also bicycle detection at all of the intersections. And this next slide will show you the intersections. If I can get it. There we go. So this map here is from the traffic study, and you can see the numbered squares there. That is the 5 study intersections. All 5 of the study intersections are signalized. And so this gives you a little bit of a closer look at when we talk about the existing conditions and the future operations, these are the locations we're talking about. So with that, I will hand it over to Joe, our project manager, to present about the existing conditions.
Thanks, Angela. Again, I'm Joe Streeper with Mark Thomas. I'm a professional civil engineer and working out of our San Jose office. And happy to be here tonight. And just like to say also that we're here to present this project, but we're also definitely here to listen to feedback. That's the phase of the project that we're in right now, is to essentially get this public outreach and to accept your feedback. So we're happy to hear suggestions or comments and on the project. So Java Drive as a road diet is by definition taking some of the road that you've got out there. It may be perhaps more than is necessary for what you would like to have as a plan, and taking some of that and essentially redistributing it from all cars or very car centric to other modes of travel, and in this case, bike travel. So that's the sort of definition of a road diet. Now the existing condition out there is along Java is the light rail starting in the center of the existing road. So the tracks, there's dual tracks, one going each way. And outside of that is a planting strip. Typically it's 12 feet wide. And then we also have in certain areas near the intersections, it sometimes converts from being a planting, that planting goes away and it becomes either a turn lane, like a left turn lane pocket, or sometimes it's a part of the station on one side. So if you're going eastbound or westbound, you might have that converted to actually a station area. And then we have 11-foot and 14-foot through lanes for the cars. And outside of that, we have a 6-foot sidewalk. Okay. If I go to the next slide, please. So what we've done for starting this is to look at a traffic analysis to say, if we were to have this project, how would this project actually affect the traffic conditions that are out there? Through a fairly detailed analysis done by a subconsultant of ours, Kimberly Horn, we prepared a traffic study and through a memo. The memo is about 200 pages long, and it's got a lot of data there. So we'll keep this fairly short as far as the information we're providing here. But it was a level of service analysis, and a level of service is essentially, it's a qualitative measure for measuring traffic delay. And those are typically done in terms of a grade, if you will, A, B, C, D, E, and F. And we determined that the existing level of service is what we would call acceptable. And these levels of traffic were all gathered prior to our COVID-19 traffic levels. We know right now the traffic levels are down quite a bit. They're picking up again, but that's what our data was currently measuring against. And then, of course, we know that future demand anticipates more vehicle volume. So we'll definitely have more traffic in the future, but the baseline was the pre-COVID levels. So what are we proposing to do? So the road diet would essentially take one of those through lanes and on the outside of the road and convert that to a bike lane. So this proposed section here shows a bike lane with a buffer, and that buffer could either be a stripe or it could be some other vertical element. If it were a striped bike lane, we would consider that to be a class 2, which is essentially a buffered striped bike lane, or a class 4 if you have that buffer be a physical vertical barrier. So that would be more like what we would call a cycle track. So this is an example here of a class 2 buffered bike lane. These are just samples. This is not Java Drive, but these are just what these would look like. And I imagine that most people on this commission know these well. But this is a class 2 buffered bike lane. So this is one of our options. And if we can go to the next one. And a class 4 is essentially a cycle track or a separated bikeway. And this just involves a physical vertical barrier. So very similar. The space required is essentially the same. It's just a matter of having some vertical element there. The road on the right there is in Palo Alto, and I'm not sure where the one on the left is, but hopefully you get the idea of what those are about. Next slide. So let's talk about the traffic analysis. So when we talk about traffic analysis, we use terms like acceptable to say it's, it's a term that we use. And what happens beyond acceptable is not necessarily unacceptable. In this case, we're just going to term that as overcapacity. And so we need to think of these things in terms of what happens to cars, because by definition in a road diet, you're taking away from the advantage of cars and sort of having a more complete street philosophy and giving some of that capacity over to bicycles. So just because it's more traffic delays for cars, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's unacceptable. We would just, in this case, characterize it as overcapacity. So what do we actually determine here? So the level of service with the existing volumes and a class 2 and a class 4, those are both acceptable. So we know that if we have the same amount of volume of car traffic today, it's still acceptable in those terms. However, we do know that with the 2035 volumes that we're going to get a lot more vehicles out there. And so our analysis showed those to be overcapacity. Now we have a whole lot of data. We're not going to present all of that today, and we'd be happy to follow up with any questions that you have on that later. But we know that in each of these cases, the cars are going to be delayed more. And so we just consider those to be over capacity. Now, another thing that we considered was, okay, so it's over capacity with the extra volumes that you get in the 2035 year. Is there something else that we can do? And there are things that we considered and there are things that we did not consider. So generally speaking, we're not ever talking about widening the road out there, making the curbs, taking up more right of way, things like that. So there are some parameters to this project that are really just not on the table for this job. But what did we look at was signal coordination, and we found a minor improvement there. So that means with the 5 signalized intersections, if you were to have synchronized signals, then there's a minor improvement there. And that means that perhaps a level of service E might shift to a D, for example. And but generally speaking, it was very minor. And then we also looked at some things like some geometric changes. And for those, for example, these are turn pockets, for example, that maybe a double left turn lane, that sort of thing. And we did not find any improvement for those. So generally speaking, those types of improvements, because we don't actually have a lot of space for those, it just didn't really make much difference in the actual traffic analysis. And I believe that may be the end of, go to the next slide, please. Yes, so I'll turn it back to Angela now for what are our next steps?
So with that, we wanted to present to you, where do we go from here? Where are we at now? And we're at the beginning. We're in the project option selection portion. We're doing the traffic analysis, as Joe mentioned, and this is our first public outreach. So you get to be the first to hear it. We're planning on going to City Council this summer and hopefully getting a selection of which option to move forward with, and also get their approval of removal of a vehicular lane by fall of this year. As soon as we get that action by council, we'll move straight away into environmental clearance, begin the studies, do another round of public outreach, and we anticipate that that'll be done by the end of this calendar year. Then again, we'll move right into final design. We've got funding and the team ready to go, and that we expect will take another handful of months or so and complete by spring of next year. And then we'll get a contractor on board and construct it, and anticipate that the project will be completed, ready for public use by spring of 2023. And so with that, I will hand it back over to the acting chair and see if you have any questions, feedback. As Joe mentioned, we're here to get your feedback, get your thoughts, and include that moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you for that very interesting presentation. I'm looking forward to seeing it when it does arrive in whatever form. But I'm going to take my chair's privilege and ask the questions first. So the first question I have is your 2035 traffic projections. Are they taking into account the active transportation plan with the intended reduction of vehicles miles traveled? Also, the Moffett Park specific plan, which is actually geared towards reduction of solo vehicular traffic and more reliance on having a walkable, bikeable neighborhood with utilization of the light rail services.
So I'll take a first crack at that. Starting with your last question first, with the Moffett Park specific plan, we've been coordinating really closely with their team, and they're still working out what the roadway network and the land use patterns and maps will look like. But we do know that it's going to be more focused on multimodal. And so we feel like this project will definitely complement that really well. So we're making sure that they know what we're doing and vice versa. Regarding vehicle miles traveled, so this segment of roadway is predominantly short segments with signalized intersections. And per our council policy on this topic, LOS is the metric that we use for intersection operations. So that's why we're doing that for this analysis. But we also feel like, telling the story is more than just the LOS, and that the VMT, we believe that if we did a VMT, that it most likely would not tell the story accurately. The segments are so short that your vehicle miles traveled probably wouldn't show much difference from existing. But we do believe that adding the bike lane is going to create people's desire to mode shift. They'll have a safer, more comfortable bike ride, get on light rail with their bike, and so that doesn't really get reflected in the level of service. But that's why we're doing the presentation to explain that better.
No, I wasn't asking. There was a misunderstanding there. I wasn't asking for vehicle miles traveled versus level of service in terms of analysis. I'm talking about the assumption that the vehicular traffic will increase rather than the stated goals of the city to reduce reliance on individual vehicular traffic.
Sorry.
That's all right.
No, so the 2035 volumes that we're using are based on general plan numbers. And so they're projections that have been, and Dennis can correct me if I'm wrong, but these are numbers that have already been incorporated into citywide plans, and we're using them on Project Citywide.
Okay, I'm just concerned with when this is presented to the public with the implied thing that we will be over capacity on these streets, when it might not necessarily be the case if we design this correctly enough so that we can do the transportation shift and get more people out of their solo vehicles and into utilizing the transit service options that are available. The other thing I wanted to ask was, I know this is like early stages and it talks about, I would have liked to have seen some of the ideas for the intersections, how the intersections would possibly be redesigned to reduce vehicular bicycle conflict. Like, are you looking at left turn lane boxes for bikes in those left turn pockets? The intersection of Crossman and Java, there's a ramp basically that goes from the Crossman side that goes up onto Java, which vehicles don't often slow down. I travel this route very frequently when I used to bike commute to work back in the pre-days, so I know it very well. So when you're going up to that 237 bridge, that overcrosses 237 to get to the other side, to the intersection of, say, Fair Oaks and Tasman, because that's a very high residential area. I would have liked to have seen some idea of what the intersections would look like for the future. We know what the bike lanes look like, but and is that slated for like the next part of the project kind of thing?
Yeah, right now we're just looking at on a more of a conceptual level, and the geometric changes that they analyzed were based on speculation of, here are the volumes, here's where the most people turn right or the most people turn left. What would happen to the analysis numbers if we added a pocket there? And so it was not looking yet at that level of detail. So for example, how much right of way do we have? How would that change the lane widths and that sort of thing? So we haven't done that yet, but that will be included in the future. And so this is good to know that that's a specific intersection of concern. And so when we get to the design stage, we can definitely look at that more carefully and pay attention to that movement for bicyclists.
I would also add that nothing that we're doing now precludes the use of any of this. So, these are things that, it's good input, and something like a bike box there, it could be implemented. There's no reason why it couldn't be.
I would think it would almost be necessary since that's going to be a residential area, up there. So, that would necessitate having some sort of, I know what the Google and the Moffett Park specific plan is, and they want this to be a friendly community to pedestrians and cyclists as well as vehicles. And so, adding, accommodating left turn boxes and stuff like that. It seems to be a matter of course. But and then my only other, I guess that's my only other question. My only other comment is I prefer physical barriers to paint. Paint does not protect cyclists. So that's it. And then I'm sorry, I didn't see who raised their hand first, so I'm just going to go down in order by who I'm going in participants. So Commissioner Wee, Chair recognizes you.
Thank you, Chair. And typically, actually, when people raise their hand, whoever raised it first is in order if you view the gallery view, just for reference.
Oh, okay.
But not
Well,
always,
they're
but-
everybody, not always, not in my
not always.
view.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I'm
I
there.
just see hands. So.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the very concise and clear presentation. I really appreciated that. I have a few quick questions, hopefully. Back to the 2035 volumes, you mentioned those are from the general plan. When was that piece in the general plan established? How recently was that refreshed?
I am going to have to ask Dennis or Lillian to chime in on that. They're more familiar with the general plan numbers.
Let's see. So the LUTs was actually adopted back in 2000, I believe 2017. So those were the land use assumptions that were adopted into the general plan, and we are going to be using those land use, as well as I believe we're going to be incorporating some of the recently adopted land use as well, including the downtown specific plan amendments, as well as some of the foreseeable land use in the various different plans, including the El Camino Real update, as well as the Lawrence Station area plan update.
Thank you. And continuing with my questions, when do staff look at this, do they typically go out and actually survey it in person at all, or is it just based on satellite views and photos from other people?
When you say survey,
Like I saw that cross section. Do you actually go out there and eyeball it yourself in person, or do you just take photos and satellite views when you create the cross
probably
sections?
address this, Angela, if you don't mind.
sure.
So in this phase, we would usually, so we have a combination of as-built drawings that we would typically look at. So it's things when the road was originally built. I believe in this case, we started with some satellite images, just like you said, and we can tell a lot from Google Earth. This is a very regular, this road doesn't have a lot of variation at all to it. So it's typically the right-of-way is easily found out by us. And then we can usually get a very accurate measurement just from something like Google Earth. However, so we're confident in the widths that you see out there, and usually we can get those things very accurate even from those. Less than a foot, certainly, and usually more accurate than that. When we go to design, we actually do, a real design has a survey, and those things are very accurate. So those things would be physically, I mean, we as consultants, of course, have been out to the site. We've looked at it with our own eyes. So it's in our backyard. So, but the actual physical measurements out there would be done for design with a survey. Typically, we have what we call aerial photogrammetry, and that it gives us a very accurate topography map.
Got it. I noticed that you didn't have a sidewalk on both sides in a few of the diagrams, and that surprised me. I could have sworn there actually is a sidewalk.
There is. You're right.
Okay.
I think that I noticed that too, and I was almost cringing when I saw that picture. But you're right. There is a sidewalk on both sides, I believe, and I think it actually might not be continuous. I think there may be some gaps in one side. So I think it ends and stops and starts along I want to say the south side.
Yeah, along those lines, I was wondering if we have an opportunity also to make sure the sidewalk is continuous connection. Although some of the sidewalks actually aren't right next to the street, they veer off and do different patterns through.
Some of them are strange. They actually wind through private property. Yeah. That is not what this project does, but I concur with your sentiment.
Yeah, we're looking for complete streets, particular in our group is Bike Ped Commission. And let's see. In your diagram, that'd be really helpful, I think, for the public or when you go to council, to show them approximately where you expect residential areas to show up relative to where this project is located. Because right now it's all commercial. But as the chair mentioned, some residences are they're thinking of putting them in certain places. I think they've got rough locations scoped out. Doesn't, you know, they don't have to be perfect, but that could actually help people understand what this is going to be like going forward. And I've got one more question. Oh, yeah, this is actually back to the 2035 volumes. I know in our climate action plan, and has been alluded to, we're looking to reduce vehicle miles traveled. I was curious if that is factored into what it shows up in our LUT, or a land use transportation element. Does the climate action plan actually change the volume, since we're shooting for changing people's behavior? We're trying to get more people biking and walking. And actually, there's another related question to that. Do we have levels of service for biking and walking versus vehicles? So it's kind of two-part question. One is
the last answering your last one, no, we don't. That's the simple answer to that. And I'll leave it to the city for the first part. You're muted, Angela.
Thank you. I was going to ask Lillian if she had some insights on the cap volume question.
So the CAP is an overarching action plan for us to move forward, to move ahead, and looking into the future in terms of what kind of actions we could take in order to reduce not only the VMT is one of the key elements within the plan, but the overarching goal is actually to reduce greenhouse gas. So within the general plan, the general plan assumptions are mainly the land use assumptions, and at least for the LUT, is mainly the land use assumptions and the network assumptions, and that was adopted before the CAP was adopted. And so what we are working on right now throughout the city is trying to find ways to improve the transportation network for all modes, including pedestrian, transit, and bicycle. And we think that, when we have more of these improved network, then it would help with the mode shifts. And so with that, we're hoping that, in the long run, we would be able to work toward the reduction of VMT.
okay. Thank you. That's all for my questions.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Commissioner Wee. Commissioner Dave, and followed by Commissioner Hafman.
Thank you. What I would like to see as a member of the public who is cheering for our east-west routes with bike routes is what you're connecting these two. So I know to the west is a high job area, and to the east, it looks like it drops down onto what becomes Fair Oaks, which is currently kind of a nightmare to bicycle on. So is the thought, I motivate me to want to bike on this. I think it connects to the Borregas bike overpass, yay, and it connects to light rail, great. What's the plan for bicyclists that are biking and not getting off on the light rail? Thank you very much.
I think that this is one segment that we're trying to get the folks who are in this segment to mode shift, and it's one piece of the greater puzzle in the whole Moffett Park area. I unfortunately don't have insight as to why these limits were selected. Maybe Dennis could chime in on that, but I think that the main motivator for this segment was we have a lot of trips generated within this segment that can be, and maybe there's a higher motivation for those users to, from their companies or whatever, to use alternative modes. And so if we can get them to figure out how to get here, we make this last mile segment more appealing as a cyclist. Dennis, I'm not sure if you have any other insights as to the project limits.
You're pretty, you're correct in that statement. And then also within our previous bike plan, it identified a bike facility along Tasman also. So we're simply implementing something that was in our bike plan and currently in our ATP also.
Okay, so it would connect up to Tasman where you could continue along that way to go east-west further. Do I understand that correctly?
It would connect, there's options eventually within our ATP, you can connect into facilities on Moffett Park that'll take you to the East Channel where there will be eventually a trail along there. And then you could connect onto Fair Oaks, where Fair Oaks, we're working on a bike lane right now. That's soon to be advertised and then soon to go under construction.
Oh.
And then, of course, you're all familiar that we're looking at, there's a study issue for Tasman Drive to look at possibly a roadway reallocation study and to put in sidewalks and bicycle facilities along Tasman also.
Okay, and in the meantime, I believe it connects lunch spots with work spots. So I think that it could, in the near term, help a lot of people get out of their cars. Thank you.
And so thank you, Commissioner Dave, Commissioner Hafman, and then Commissioner Swale.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Most of my questions have been answered, but I want to elaborate a little more on the overpass over 237. I don't think there's bike lanes on that today. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is it possible that you could include at least that overpass in this study so that, you know, you can deal with the city streets? It's the overpasses that don't have clearance at the end of the lanes that get really dangerous. And I agree, a lot of people are coming from the south. I mean, if you're going to put all this effort into building that 1 mile of buffered bike lane, which is wonderful, but there's no way to get to it other than the Borregas path. You have to look at how long will it be before there is another connection. So that's my comment, but I would really like to see, if possible, to include that overpass in the study. Second of all, my earlier questions have been mostly answered. I noticed the sidewalk on one side too, and I was going to ask about that. It sounds like, but that was just the nature of the drawing, that there will be consistent sidewalks on both sides. I think that's a requirement. I noticed there's a lot of vegetation taking up space that potentially could be used for transportation. Is there a requirement that you have to keep that? Or can that be taken out as needed?
So the vegetation in the median cannot be altered because that's within the VTA's right of way and the space that they're using for their transit stations. The vegetation on the outsides of the roadway we'll have to take a closer look at that, but for the most part, that's probably within private right of way. So we can take a look at that. But I see Dennis would like to add to that.
I was just going to add that. I was just going to mention that there actually are bike lanes on the Java Drive going over 237, landing onto Fair Oaks. We do have bike lanes on there in both directions.
I would have called it more of a, you know, there's paint that separates the side of the road from the thing, but it's not like an official bike lane with green paint or anything like that.
And then just for the committee's information, we are working with VTA and Caltrans to look at possibly reconfiguration and redoing this overcrossing. So we are looking into things at this location, and that's something that's on Caltrans's and VTA's work scope for this fiscal year coming up.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that information.
So, so you're saying that there is a Class 2 bike lane on that overpass currently?
Currently, yes.
Is it like a 4-foot, one of those standard 4-foot type bike lanes?
Looking from Google Earth, it's either going to be 4 or 5 foot. I'm not able to get an accurate measurement on there.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I wanted to provide one quick correction in that this project that we're envisioning, again, we're For this meeting, we're not envisioning changing anything outside of the curbs on Java Drive. So specific to this project, this project is not intending to touch the sidewalks to make them continuous. So I just didn't want there to be we understand your concern and support that idea, but this is not that project. This is solely dedicated to bike lanes.
Okay, Commissioner Hafen, thank you very much. Commissioner Swale.
Thank you, Vice Chair Melman. Likewise, many questions have been answered, but I would like to add a few points and let's get some clarifications on some of the answers. So you mentioned that the traffic volumes are based on 2035 predictions, but that was based on 2017 land use studies. So that is likely prior to Google's acquisition of property and plans for expansion, building of new campuses. So have or will any of the local businesses throughout that corridor, have they been approached or will they be approached and solicited for feedback, comments, suggestions? So that's one question, and maybe we'll start there, and then I've got a couple comments to follow up.
So your question is if the local businesses will be approached specific about this project?
Correct.
Yes, yeah, they are stakeholders in this project, and we have been meeting with them, and they will be part of this, well, every round of public outreach. We will make sure to touch base with them, let them know the same information we're sharing with you, and get their feedback and build it into the next round.
Great, thank you, Angela.
And to respond to your questions regarding the land use assumptions. So back in 2017, when we developed the general plan, we were looking at land use growth that we foresee would happen within Sunnyvale in the next around 30 years or so. So a lot of the projects that are being built right now or being approved right now most of them would be, I think most of them would be within what was identified in the general plan, with the exception, for example, when we had to go back and amend the downtown specific plan amendment to add additional land use. Those extra land use were not accounted for in the general plan, so we had a study to study those. However, the other developments within Moffett Park that have been approved, those were, I believe, mostly accounted for when we adopted the general plan, the LUTs, into 2017.
Thank you, Lillian. So yeah, to follow up on that, certainly, as we all know, the pandemic has impacted the working in the office, work from home, and the local businesses back there will certainly have amended the work schedules or policies of working in the office versus working in the home. It allows some flex scheduling for both. And I was just listening to a recent study that had suggested that employees are going to opt for a flexible work from home schedule of approximately 1 to 3 days per week, that they will opt out of returning to the office and working remotely, for example, working from home. So I certainly believe that under the latest circumstances with the pandemic, that could impact the 2035 volumes, and consultation with those local businesses and their policies could impact that study, that volume study. So I just wanted to make that comment because I thought that was a very interesting statistic that was recently revealed in a study. And in fact, that was presented on the latest Freakonomics podcast, just for reference.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Swale. Do you have anything further?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Wee, I'm assuming you have follow-up questions, or did you have leave your hand raised?
Nope, I have a follow-up, comment. So I have actually ridden those bike lanes over Java, and they're quite adequate for regular bike lanes. They are 5+ feet wide and even 4 feet if you don't include the gutter, which is awesome.
Right.
to actually
Right.
have a wide enough pavement, not in the gutter. So those are adequate bike lanes. No, they don't have green paint, but they're standard, reasonable bike lanes that I've ridden a number of times. And I'm glad that Commissioner Swale also brought up the pandemic change with our employers. I do know that Google and several other employers have a number of people now who are working from home permanently. In fact, I know some Google employees who have just relocated completely out of the area. So they know their job can be done remotely forever. So that is a change in behavior that we're seeing that the pandemic has caused, which I think will affect their 2035 projection numbers. In addition to our climate action plan, hopefully also causing further change. And
Yeah,
we should open it for public comment also, by the way. We've got a.
Yes, yes, we
Thank
will open it for public comment. Yeah, I do not see people commuting from Livermore anymore if they can get away with it, not having to do that kind of commute. I could definitely see the preference in getting many hours of their lives back. If there are no further questions from the commissioners present, I will open this at this point for public comment, and hopefully we will hear from the public. Ms. Zhang, is there anybody interested in commenting?
We do have one member of the public who has raised their hand. This is Alon Golan. Let's see.
Have we unmuted Ms. or Mr.?
So
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for giving me the mic. First of all, Angela, I totally need your eye exam sign there in the background. Sorry, I have to say that. How do I start my video? Not sure. Regarding the 237 bridge, like Tim said, there's a bike lane there. I find it tricky with the on and off ramps that are merge lanes, and they require a lot of turning around and looking, and then it's tend to be pretty scary, at least for me, to use that bike lane once it has these very fast on off ramp for the cars that cross the bike lane. So if we're looking at access roads to that area, that'll be one thing I would be focused on, because we already have a bridge, already have a bike lane. We can improve on that bike lane. In terms of where this bike lane ends on the other side, so you mentioned two things. One is the Fair Oaks bike lane that I had no idea was coming. That's great news. The other that I've heard of before is the Tasman Drive part between Fair Oaks and Lawrence Expressway, which Ari Franklin is pressing hard now to get a study to do it, to add a bike lane and pedestrian sidewalk there, which are non-existent. So anyone here listening, if you care about the access to this whole area in making this project we're talking about tonight more valuable, I urge you to get involved and push for the bike lane on Tasman as well. And also on the other side of this entire neighborhood, or right now it's a commercial area, I guess, but gonna be some neighborhood.
Hello,
There is the Mary Bridge that is
I'm so
planned
sorry,
on
your
the other
time
side.
is done. Can you I'm so sorry. Can you quickly summarize your question so we can
Yeah, just wanted to one thing is regarding the class 4. I totally see a class 4 is much better than class 2, because cars tend to park there a lot less and block the bike lane. And regarding the projections for 2035, I don't see why we're looking at level of service for cars, which is something we don't want to promote. We don't want to make it easier to drive. Thank you very much. Sorry for going over time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And at this point, thank you again for that presentation. I'll be interested in seeing, what the next stages of the project are, and certainly we will be present for, the public input portion of it when it's presented, and also how it links up with the Moffett Park specific plan changes. Again, thank you. for that presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, moving
So,
on to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Chair, I want to make an announcement that the city clerk informed me that the mayor will be able to attend to join us later tonight at around 7:45 to 7:50.
Okay.
And so at that time, when he joins, then we would want to stop the presentation or the item, and then reopen RTC 21-0667 recognition of service,
Okay,
and allow the mayor the opportunity to recognize the outgoing commissioners.
so noted. We will reopen item 21-0667 when Mayor Klein graces us with his presence at approximately 7:45.
Correct.
Okay. All right, then moving on to the next presentation, 21-0669 is the presentation on the Lawrence Station Area Plan, an update and a draft subsequent environmental impact report. And so let us away.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members of the Commission. My name is George Schroeder. I'm a senior planner with the Community Development Department. Also with me, I have Amber Blazinski. She's a principal planner in charge of policy planning within CDD. And I have a presentation I'll walk you through. And I understand I might need to put on pause towards the end, but okay.
So George, you have control now.
Okay, thank you. So I just hit the forward button?
Yes. Or down arrow.
Yeah, I'm not able to move it.
Maybe there's too much of a lag.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, so just the purpose, we just want to give the Commission an overview of what we're doing in Lawrence Station with the plan update. Talk a little bit about the EIR, and then go over the next steps for kind of path ahead this summer, and then just information on how to provide public comments. We're not looking for a formal recommendation tonight, but we definitely want to welcome comments from the Commission and members of the public, and then from the Commission, whether it's as a group or individually, either is fine. A little bit of a lag. Lillian, it might be better if you can control it. I'll just say next. Okay, so yeah, here's the overview of the presentation. We'll give you a background on kind of how we got to this point. Just give a high-level overview of the amendments that we're looking at. One of those amendments is expanding the current boundary to include parcels owned by Intuitive Surgical. And they're planning on doing a new corporate campus on these parcels. Talk about the subsequent EIR and the environmental considerations with these changes. The sense of place plan, that would be a new plan that we'll be creating. And then just the next steps. Next slide, please. Next. So here are the current boundaries of the Lawrence Station plan, or LSAP as we call it. So the solid red line is the current boundary. The plan area is really focused around the Lawrence Caltrain station. Lawrence Expressway and Kiefer Road are kind of the main cross streets to the north, and Reed Avenue in Lawrence is the southern boundary. This is a part of the city on the far southeastern edge of the city. It's bounded by Santa Clara on kind of either side of the plan area boundaries. And two of the main streets, Kiefer Road and Uranium, one half is Sunnyvale, the other half is Santa Clara. If you can click next, please. This is the boundary expansion area. So these are the 3 parcels that Intuitive is requesting that be included as part of the plan area. And that would facilitate the development of the campus that they're proposing. Next, please. So it's been a long process, but you know, back when we adopted the original LSAP, this was back in December of 2016. The council gave staff direction to study additional housing in the area because it's really a prime opportunity because it's an underdeveloped area, at least with regard to residential, and it's a prime location with the Caltrain station being there. So they gave us additional direction upon adoption to look at amending the plan again to allow more. So we kicked off that process in 2018. Had a meeting with the community to kind of get some of their feedback, and then we presented some options to the council as a preferred alternative on which direction they wanted to go with, you know, how many potential units we could be adding. Shortly after that, Intuitive proposed expansion of the boundary, which the council authorized, and then after that, we started to kick off the environmental review, get more into the sense of the place plan. And then we had a couple of study sessions last year with the council and planning commission to kind of give an update on the plan. It's been a ever evolving plan. There's been a lot of changes in state law with regard to residential development. So we've had to change it a few times. And then we finally have the drafts ready for review just as of last month. Next, please.
So, Mayor Klein has just joined us, so we're going to put a pause on this item. So, Acting Chair, can you?
Yes, so we will put a pause on this presentation. Thank you for a moment, and we will resume. We will revert to reopening item 210667 presentation, recognition of service. Mayor Klein, if you would like to speak.
Absolutely, and thank you for this interruption. I'm sorry, we're okay. In about a 6-hour meeting of interviewing our redistricting applicants. So you know it's kind of dual meeting. So I'm in the middle of my break right now, and I appreciate you allowing me to come here and speak from that standpoint. So let me just, of course, you know, wish that we could be doing this face to face at our, you know, annual boards and commissions recognition event. But of course, we're all still living with the effects of COVID, at least for a while, and hopefully, you know, as things keep opening up, we'll start seeing people more in person. But so for now, these congratulations are going to be have to be done from a safe social distance. Of course, everyone knows, you know, I'm a big advocate for biking, for walkability, and you know, the BPAC was actually the first commission that I applied to from a city standpoint, and ended up losing by a coin flip. So that's what happens when council can't make a decision and ultimately is locked up with a similar number of votes for 2 candidates. So that's a little education for everyone. But I just want to say I really appreciate the wonderful job that this commission does in trying to make the active transportation plan and a reality. And I think that was one of the biggest things that has been done over the last year, is finally getting that over the goal line, so that we actually have a long-term vision as far as walkability, bikeability in our city, and hopefully that will get funded. And this is the whole thing of getting the appropriate funding. And I've been working with our state legislators, with our federal legislation, federal representatives, trying to get that done. And so we'll see how that goes, but already we're seeing some movement, and I'm looking forward to what happens in the next month or two. But from that standpoint, you know, tonight we're really here to honor 3 members in particular: John Cordes, Scott Swale, and of course Arwin Dave. And I just want to thank you all for your service on this commission. You know, John served almost two terms, and I really appreciate the long-term commitment to bikeability in Sunnyvale, whether or not that's on this commission or Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition. To me, that it's been really good working with you for so many years on these specific issues, whether or not that's in Sunnyvale or beyond our borders. Scott, I want to thank you for your service and your commitment to biking here in Sunnyvale. And Arwen, you know, I especially want to thank you for your commitment and service on this commission, as well as reapplying. And happy that we reappointed you to use that experience and continue on in this commission. So thanks to the outgoing and reappointed members, and thanks to the entire commission for your continued work for our residents, for our city, and just trying to make things a little bit better as far as walkability, bikeability, and how people interface with their city, how people get around within our city, which is really so important. So I look, you know, if as always, you know, if you have any questions, any comments, feel free to reach out to your council members, reach out to your mayor. If you ever have ideas, questions, you know, whatever you want to advocate about, you know, we are here and we're here to listen, much like you are here to make recommendations and also listen to our residents from that standpoint. So I look forward to seeing all of you sometime in the near future, whether or not that's downtown on Murphy Avenue, or, you know, hopefully at the State of the City event in October, where we're trying to bring especially our boards and commissioners together who haven't seen each other in person. So with that, I just want to thank you, and thanks for allowing me to speak here for a few minutes tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Klein. And I'm sure Commissioner Dave is relieved to know that she is not going anywhere, because from the look of surprise on her face, I thought for a moment she was like, where am I going? And so you were recognizing that she was re-upping. And so thank you for that. And I'm sorry that Commissioner Cordes is not here with us tonight to have listened to your thanks. I know that you guys have known each other for quite some time and worked together on various city projects. And thank you again for your thanks. And I will let Commissioner Swale speak on his own behalf.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Klein. It's been an honor and a privilege, and we have certainly accomplished a lot. I'm proud to have served, and certainly glad to have met you and worked with you on some occasions and projects. So I certainly appreciate your commitment to the BPAC, and I will continue my involvement as an active participant in advocating for bicycle and pedestrian access, multimodal transportation in the city of Sunnyvale and its surrounding cities. So thank you very much for joining us. It's been an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for serving.
Thank you again, Mayor Klein, and enjoy what's left of your break.
Thank you all, and have a good evening, and thank you for allowing me to interrupt your meeting. Have a good evening. Good luck.
Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Mr. Schroeder, if you would like to resume with your presentation, we will return to item number 210669.
Okay, yeah, so I'll just give an overview of the amendments if you can move it forward. So this is the plan area. It's more of a close-up version. If you can click next. I have some animation, so I might have to ask you to click next a lot. But yeah, so one of the main amendments is to allow housing where it's not currently allowed. Overall, the plan area does allow housing mainly north of the tracks. Also, the former Calstone Peninsula Building Materials site, there was a recent residential approval there. But we're looking at introducing housing at the corner of Willow and Reed, sort of that dark red area. And then in the area that's east of Calabasas Creek, framed by Kiefer and Uranium, It's mainly an industrial area, and those are really the uses that could be built as it stands. But one of the amendments is to introduce housing into this area, along with a continuation of allowing industrial uses, commercial, and residential in a mixed-use format. And mixed use is really a key component of this area, whether on the same site or next to each other. We really want to capitalize on the asset of having the station right there, to have employment and residential land uses within close proximity, just to give more people options to move around, on foot or on bike, taking transit. And then the other amendments would be, there's a couple areas where we would not be permitting housing. This is on the Costco site and a few others that are on the corner of Kiefer Road and Lawrence Expressway. The city's interested in maintaining a commercial presence at this highly visible corridor. And also on the intuitive sites that are proposed in the boundary expansion. They're not proposing residential, and then there's also some past contamination from other past uses on the site to make that a little challenging. If you can click next. So yeah, in most of the other areas, we're going to be maintaining the allowance for housing, but allowing for higher densities to be built. And it's the Lawrence Station Area Plan is kind of a incentive-based plan where if a project is providing incentives or community benefits, they can build higher densities. So I'll go through some of the components, but more affordable housing, covered bus stops, things like new circulation paths. Those are things that can get additional density. If you can click next. So the original plan allowed for about 2,300 units, and we've had a couple of big projects come in since then that have whittled that number down. And with this update, we're looking at increasing the units potential to about 3,600, which would result in a little bit less than 6,000 possible units that could be built. And it's important to note the city's not proposing any of these units at this time. These are would be private development projects that would be coming in over time. And as each project is approved, then that number would be going down. But yes, this is kind of the main bulk of the amendments. We're also doing some just some cleanup items. Since 2016, there's been some changes in policies and other consistency edits as well. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah, so we're going to talk about the boundary expansion a little bit more. If you click next. So this is more of a zoomed in version of the boundary, showing the current boundary location and then the three sites that are part of the inclusion. This is at Kiefer Road, close to commercial streets, bounded by Central Expressway. These sites equate to about 32 acres. Again, we're not looking at introducing any housing allowances. It will remain industrially zoned. There's also a overall capacity for office and R&D, research and development capacity to be built within the LSAP. It's about 1.2 million square feet. But the Intuitive project would be using most of that remaining balance, and we're not looking at an increase of that as part of this update. Next, please. And then this is just a site plan and a couple of renderings of the Intuitive project. So this would be following shortly after the plan amendments. If you could hit next. Yeah, so on the north side, an office building is proposed about 365,000 square feet. The rendering on the top right would be the north building, and that's the view from, both of these views are from Kiefer Road. And then on the south building would be a manufacturing and R&D facility for Intuitive's products, about 850,000 square feet. If you can click next a couple more times. So linking the two buildings would be a pedestrian bridge across Kiefer Road, and this would be accessible for employees of and visitors of the building, just to link people across the two sites without having to cross that grade. Parking would be underneath the north building in a couple of levels of underground parking, and then a freestanding parking structure would be mainly for the south sites parking. Next, please. Okay, and yeah, so this is just an overview of the CEQA and the environmental impact report. So the California Environmental Quality Act is something we have to look at for all projects, where we have to evaluate environmental impacts and disclose any potential impacts, and really just inform the readers and decision makers on environmental considerations that need to be taken into effect. So it's a standalone document that's really meant to disclose information. It doesn't bound any of the decision makers to a decision on any of the impacts, but we do have to look at mitigation measures that are feasible, and look at alternatives as well that could be considered for more of a environmentally superior project. So the EIR has to be certified prior to the project approval, but certification doesn't require approval of the project. It's really just making sure that it's adequate and discloses all the impacts. Next, please. So for this project, we're doing what's called a subsequent EIR because it's a modification of a previously adopted, certified EIR, which was done in 2016 as part of the original plan adoption. And for this EIR, we're combining the Intuitive project with the plan amendments, just for efficiency purposes, just so it's one document, and because they're both occurring at the same time. So the alternatives that were analyzed were the standard no project alternative. And this is, kind of a business as usual. If none of these projects happen, what would be the results? And then the other two were options that we originally presented to the council a few years ago, which would have a reduced unit counts, and then assuming that the Intuitive projects would still move forward as proposed. So most of the impacts could be mitigated to a less than significant level, or were less than significant, but a couple stood out as significant and unavoidable impacts. The first one's for construction emissions, and this is really for future residential projects that we have no idea what their construction details will be like. So that's basically an automatic, significant, and unavoidable. So each of those projects in the future would have to be analyzed on a case-by-case basis. And then the other is a cumulative impact to our water pollution control plant, because it's being rebuilt right now and did not accommodate the development that's proposed here, and then some of our other plan updates, such as downtown specific plan. That was also a finding that was made for that EIR that just went through. Next, please. So just to highlight the transportation chapter, as you probably know, the vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, is now the current metric for analyzing traffic for the CEQA analysis, but we're still using LOS for operational measurements at intersections to look at improvements that need to be made under the congestion management program. But overall, this is beneficial towards VMT because this area has been historically an industrial area where people are coming from all around the region to work here. But with these updates, it would encourage more residential development, so where more people can start living in this area closer to some existing businesses. So theoretically, people could be living and working in the same geographic area, have more options to walk and bike in the area, and get out of their car potentially. But yeah, so it'd be less than significant impact to bicycle and pedestrian facilities. This would not be creating any transportation hazards or inadequate emergency access. There would be, a new mitigation measure for Intuitive's construction, really just like a standard traffic control plan during construction, as to not disrupt any bicycle or pedestrian facilities. Next, please. So yeah, we're doing a new sense of place plan, and we have a few others in the city that are really in areas that were historically industrial, and they don't have many facilities that accommodate pedestrians or bicyclists, or just not very inviting in general. So we're trying to do that with Lawrence Station. There's a lot of lines, but I'll highlight a few of the key components. If you can click next. The main element is our new loop road system. So the goal is to get vehicles and bicyclists and pedestrians closer to the station by providing some cut-throughs to these large lot parcels. So and also for public transit as well, because buses currently cannot access the Caltrain station. It's really just some private shuttles that go there. But as properties redevelop over time, the city will require public access easements through these sites to accommodate these roads, and then additional density points will be given if the applicant chooses to construct these this road that will be multimodal and will provide more of a direct route to the station. A new leg of that has been built with a project that was developed by Greystar on Kiefer, just west of Lawrence. There's one kind of piece that was built, and eventually it will connect to Sonora Court, which will provide a direct link to the Caltrain station from Kiefer Road. And then east of Lawrence, it'll be built mainly through private property, connecting up through Corvin Drive at Santa Clara. If you can click next, please. So the other main element is the Class 1 shared use path. This is the one that's west of Lawrence. A large portion of this was just built with another Intuitive project, just kind of really close by the boundary expansion area. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it does allow for ped and bike access from Kiefer, and it connects all the way to Sonora Court. And then with the Intuitive project, one of their incentives is that they're proposing another extension that's closer to Commercial Street. So eventually it'll form the solid green line that has a couple of access points from Kiefer to the Sonora Court, and then via San Zeno to the station. Click next, please. And then east of Lawrence, we're doing another path that would connect from Uranium Drive on the far eastern boundary. It would cross over Calabasas Creek and then link up to Caltrain. Now, this one's probably going to take a while to build, because it would be built on a piecemeal basis as these properties redevelop, because that's when the city can ask for at least the access easement to be provided. And then next, please. And then we're also looking at some secondary pathways, or it could be streets, just depending on site conditions, that would provide cut-throughs through some of these large lots, provide more of a pedestrian-oriented grid that can provide access in all directions and link up to the loop road and some of the paths, and just provide more shortcuts to the station. And then these would all be on private property with public access easements. You can click next, please. The sense plan also envisions some improvements to existing public streets, both in terms of the roadway and the pedestrian realm. So Kiefer Road is kind of the key backbone through the area. And the original plan had some language about considering a road diet, but it's not something that we're proposing at this time. It's something that could be considered possibly in the future as the plan develops and more people are starting to live here. We'll just have to monitor it. But as of now, we're retaining the vehicle access, in terms of lanes, but adding some wider bike lanes with strike buffers, improving the pedestrian facilities with wider sidewalks, tree buffers, street lighting. And as I noted, Kiefer is half and half Santa Clara and Sunnyvale, so we'll have to work closely with the city of Santa Clara on the improvements. Uranium Drive, it's is kind of the same situation where one half is Santa Clara, the other half's Sunnyvale, but it'd be looking at removing one lane on the the on-street parking on the Sunnyvale side to accommodate new bike lanes, buffered bike lanes, and installing sidewalks where they don't currently exist. And then, there's some really nice mature trees on that street as well that we'd be looking at retaining. Especially for Sonora Court, beautiful street trees that currently exist and we would be retaining, installing new public sidewalks behind them, and then taking out one on-street parking on the north side of the street to accommodate new bike lanes, and keeping on-street parking on the south side closer to the station. Reed Avenue, we thought a lot about this. It's a very wide street, almost unnecessarily wide, but we'd be looking at reducing some lane widths and then adding buffered bike lanes. We did look at a median at one point, but it would block access from the residential properties kind of on the south side. But we do want to improve this intersection with potentially a bulb out to be installed, and then link up with the new bike lanes that are that's currently being studied on Willow Avenue, and continue that up to the station on the side south of the tracks. Next, please. And then these are just some sections on the new shared use path, and then the loop road, which be on private property, but with public access easements. For the loop road, to be a lane in either direction with bike lanes, strike buffers, and then sidewalks. So to make sure that there's access for all types of vehicles. And then we'd also work with the VTA just to make sure that it's designed to meet access for their bus system, to make sure it can get to the station. You can click next. And then these are just some amenities. Wayfinding is something we really want to address because it's hard to navigate the area as it stands. Like I said, buses can't even access the station right now, and people don't really know that there is a station here, and it's part of Sunnyvale because it's ambiguous boundary with Santa Clara. So we really want to promote the city here and promote this district, provide directional signage to get people closer to the station. Having some amenities on private property, so they be maintained by private property owners, but oriented towards the street, so people walking the sidewalk can enjoy them. New street light fixtures that would really help to better illuminate the pedestrian environment and roadway. And they're also set up to accommodate some future telecommunication installations. Next, please. Okay, so we're almost done. So these are kind of the remaining next steps with this project. It's really speeding up through the summer here. So we're meeting tonight, and we're just going to get some comments and feedback from the commission and members of the public. And we'll be doing the same thing at other commissions next week, and the Planning Commission in a couple of weeks to look at focus on the environmental impact report. The last day for comments on the EIR is July 12th. It's a Monday. And after that, we'll work with our consultant to prepare a response to comments. There'll be a final EIR. And then we'll be looking at the last two hearings at the Planning Commission, where they'll be giving a recommendation to the council. Those dates are tentatively scheduled for August 23rd and September 14th. And next slide. I believe this is the last one. This is just some information on how to provide comments. The commission can provide comments as a group or individually, and also members of the public as well. Probably the best way outside of this meeting is to email me, and this is my email address here. Also by regular mail as well. And just a note, if there's any comments on the EIR specifically, those have to be received by July 12th. And if you can, please delineate any comments on the EIR or the plan or the sense of place plan. But that just wraps up our presentation, and we'd love to hear your comments, and also here to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder, for that presentation. Very interesting. And I will recognize Commissioner Wee, who had his hand up very quickly.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate you actually letting us commissioners go first before the chair exercises their privilege at the end to clean up. Just a few quick questions are, do these sorts of plans ever, these specific plans, do they ever cross city boundaries? Because it seems that this is very integrated with Santa Clara, and it's kind of helpful to see what Santa Clara is doing versus what Sunnyvale is doing. That's just a general question.
Yeah, so that was part of the original plan in 2016. It was a study, it was a larger study area that looked at an area, it was focused like on a half-mile radius around the station. So we did want to know what Santa Clara was doing, and coincidentally, they adopted their own Lawrence Station area plan that's kind of like northeast of Kiefer and Lawrence. And then we also looked at existing residential south of the current adopted plan area. So it was studied, but the focus now is mainly on the sense of place plan and the housing amendments. But we are also coordinating that with Santa Clara as well, just to make sure that these will be feasible as these improvements get built over time.
And my last question is, will you include wayfinding for bicycling and walking in addition to driving? You mentioned it for buses, but biking and walking is often difficult to figure out how you're supposed to go.
Yes, we have some of the smaller directional signs that are that would be installed, on the sidewalk, and would be mainly, they'd be visible to bicyclists, and then mainly probably visible for pedestrians walking along the streets. They're a little bit different than the main larger signs that would be, I guess, oriented more towards vehicle traffic as they're coming in. But yeah, these would provide more kind of fine-grained directions to the station primarily, and other destinations.
And related to that, if you actually have names on things, something that when you're using GPS for both walking and for biking, it'll tell you, say, take right, take left, won't give you a name of where am I taking the right or left for a lot of these pedestrian and bicycling ways, which makes it very hard for them to follow them. With streets, you get a name when you're trying to follow the directions, but with a lot of these bike and ped directions, you don't have that. And I'm reminded when I walked in Venice, there was actually a lot of wayfinding for pedestrians, at least. They don't have bicycles, they have a lot of steps, but it actually has names of things so that you can actually follow them through as you're walking through. But in the United States, you very rarely find the pedestrian and bikeways named in some way, shape, or form. And it'd be really helpful for us to establish that. And so it gets into the mapping system so that as people navigate, they know exactly where to turn. They know they're going the right direction. And that's it for my comments. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Wee. Do any other commissioner, Commissioner Haveman?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in discussing this plan, you mentioned, where we're going to have commercial, industrial, and where we're going to have high density housing. But what about mixed use? Are you encouraging, is there going to be a town center? Are there going to be small shops where people who live in that area can walk to? I know the original plan, they stressed that pretty heavily, but I noticed you didn't say too much about that tonight. So could you comment on that, Mr. Schroeder?
Yes, no, thank you for bringing that up, because yeah, mixed use is still a key element of the plan. It's something that's currently part of the plan and would continue to be. Retail development is difficult to build nowadays, just with more of the sales going online. But we really want to try and incentivize development of retail by providing density points for mixed use projects. So where we would traditionally see residential above retail, which would provide more people in the area to help frequent these businesses. So yes, that's still a component. Commercial retail would be allowed. in almost every location in the plant area, but we would likely probably see that on the major streets like Kiefer Road. We also want to encourage it on one part of the Loop Road, and this is part of the this is kind of where Semiconductor meets Kiefer Road, and now the new street is called Santa Victoria Terrace. One of the new projects that was just built there, it has ground floor retail, and we want to continue that along that stretch to Sonora Court. That really promote more of like a lively environment, and then just have another shortcut for people to get to the station from there, and then enjoy Sonora Court and the nice trees on there as well.
Okay, and the other thing I didn't see was any layout for parks. Are there going to be some local pocket parks in the area?
Yeah, so on the Sense of Place plan, we have just some conceptual areas where we would like to see parks, really anywhere, but mainly the area east of Lawrence Expressway, because it's just these large industrial lots. There's really no open space. But every residential project is required to address a park dedication, either through provision of actual park space or payment of in lieu fees to help support build future parks. Also, it's one of the incentives that we're proposing as well. And it'll get you probably the most amount of points because it's really important to have more open space, because there's not a lot of opportunities as it stands right now. But we are seeing, in that Gray Star project, and also the other one of the former Calstone sites, there are two private parks, like privately owned and maintained parks, but with public access, so everyone can use them. The city doesn't have to spend any money to maintain them, so we might be seeing more of that as these projects come in. But we definitely want to encourage open space provision. Especially on the larger sites on Kiefer Road. It might be a little bit difficult on Sonora Court, where there are some smaller sites, but we really want to just promote some open space opportunities.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions for now.
Okay, I have a question for you, Mr. Trevor. First of all, thank you for your presentation and for the update. It's very interesting. So you had mentioned that the housing allocated lots would be, I guess, bid on by private developers who would be able to develop the lots. So there wouldn't be any. My concern is that, as a housing opportunity close to a public transit thing, that we provide middle and low income housing as much as possible. And so my concern is that I know we don't have a large percentage of housing in this Lawrence Station plan that's delivered over to low and middle income residents. If I remember correctly, it's only like 12 units or something, or 14 units.
Yeah, so it's 15% for rental, and then the city's also proposing 15% for ownership projects for affordable housing. But for the rental, currently it's 5% very low income, and then 10% low income.
Okay, and that would be the case with these additional lots that are allocated?
That's correct.
That the builders would be required to do that? Okay. The other thing is that, yeah, okay, thank you. The other thing, as Commissioner Haveman, I'm concerned about the fact that there is lack of open space. So if you have residents in this area and they have dogs or whatever, they're going to want places where they can walk their animals safely and so forth. And so having private, Intuitive has a huge chunk of land there, and 35-acre campus, and it's going to be private. So, and it looks lovely, but it also looks like the place that people are going to want to, take their animals to and stuff like that. And it concerns me that we don't really have that. The choice is that they either build pocket parks or whatever it is, or they can allocate money to projects for parks in other areas, which kind of leaves the residents of this area out on a limb with no actual place to have a recreational space. They're near a freeway. It's supposed to be a true mixed use community, and yet we're kind of failing them on that score if we don't provide places for actual recreation.
Yeah, so in addition to the open space that's available to the public, every residential project has to provide private open space for the residents, at least on their side. Yeah, so for areas for recreation and then having dogs walk around. But yeah, I mean, for the larger parks, those will be probably for some of the other residential sites on Kiefer where there's more space to accommodate those. So yeah, that's always a challenge that we have to deal with. But yes, every site will have its own open space.
Okay, so those areas of new development will have areas of open space then. But Intuitive in their 35-acre are not required to allocate any portion of that as open space?
No, because it's a non-residential project and we don't have park requirements for non-residential. It's really just for residential uses.
Understood. Could you remind me again, do you recall what the speed limit is on Kiefer Road? Does anybody? I remember it was coming up on the road diet question. Ms. Sang, do you recall offhand, or Mr. Ng?
See, I don't recall offhand, but I think it might be 35 miles per hour. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's why we were looking at the Kiefer Road diet, because initially, or we're recommending that because of the speeds and having the buffered bike lane and so forth, and making it a truly walkable, bikeable community near a transit hub, which is the critical thing.
Actually, portion of it is 40.
Okay. All right. So then we're having buffered bike lanes on a 40-mile-an-hour street rather than physical separation. So that's still of concern to us on the BPAC, that you're still not providing a street which people will necessarily feel safe on. So, and with Intuitive's larger campus, I'm presuming that you're expecting more traffic in and out of that area other than what's right now, which is mostly just getting to and from Home Depot for gas, because it's the cheapest gas in town. But and I'm guilty, but it's just that because we have the Lawrence Expressway barrier there, and we want to make sure that with the loop and everything else that's proposed. I mean, I like the separate bicycle pedestrian routes and stuff like that. But it's also making sure that people who live in the area will feel safe cycling and walking in that area as well. And so I'm assuming that this project, let me try that again. I'm assuming that this project will conform with our not only with our climate action plan, with our complete streets planning. Yes, and
just also wanted to mention that it's definitely understood that class 4 will be preferable on Kiefer, but we wanted to introduce these new class 1 bikeways just kind of parallel to Kiefer, just to bring people off the road and closer to the station should they choose to do so. But definitely understand your concern about the striped bike lanes on Kiefer.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I will yield my time to Commissioner Dave, who has her hand raised.
First of all, I want to compliment the introduction of cut-throughs in this plan. I really think that's a wonderful reward for walking or biking through an area instead of driving. It's to have sort of your own secret pathway. And I wonder, this is actually a question for city staff. Does San Francisco has something called a POPO program, which is privately owned, publicly accessible space. And developers are rewarded for making part of their space, commercial space, open to the public by giving them X amount more square feet that they can use for retail, given that they give a certain amount to the public. So there's these areas in San Francisco and New York and London, and I'm wondering if Sunnyvale has anything like that.
Yes, well, we don't have a formal program, but that's what we're seeing with some of the newer development where, well, I guess we do have, we're proposing that to be part of the incentive program, where if a developer does build a private park and it has public access, they would get additional density. They could get additional dwelling units by doing that. Because yeah, the lack of open space is currently a big problem in this area. So we want to continue to incentivize that.
I'm so glad to hear it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Dove. Do any other commissioners have any comments? Seeing no further hand raised, I will open this for public comment. Do we have anybody from the public wishing to comment on this presentation?
We have two people from the public who want to comment. The first person is Cliff Barger. Let me share the timer. Let me share the timer. 1 moment. And then, Cliff, I'm going to send you a request, so please unmute yourself. Once you are done speaking, please lower your hand and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, thank you. My name is Cliff Barger. I, for the last 6.5 years, have worked as an engineer at Intuitive, and I also currently chair the Caltrain BAC. I'm calling on my own behalf, not on the behalf of either of those organizations. I think overall, I like most of what I'm seeing in this plan. All the new units of housing are fantastic. This is a great place to be adding housing. It's great to see more housing go in, especially near Caltrain in Santa Clara County. Also, I really like to see the off-street Class 1 bike trails and bike paths. I think that's definitely a step forward, but I've been disappointed to see the earlier proposals for Kiefer gradually rolled back. I think the buffered bike lanes being proposed on Kiefer Road are inadequate, particularly as more housing and more offices are being proposed. Personally, when I am in the office now, which is about once a week, but I anticipate being more frequently as more things open up, I have to go back and forth between different buildings along Kiefer, and I'm comfortable riding a bike, but most of my colleagues are not, and I cannot blame them. And I'm glad to see widened bike lanes and a slight buffer, but I think there needs to be some kind of a physical protection if like more people are going to feel comfortable riding a bike on Kiefer Road. And I think with this much more housing, if people are going to be able to walk to run their errands and bike to get to work or get to school, then there really needs to be a feeling of safety on Kiefer Road. And people are regularly driving 50, 60 miles an hour. We just don't need Kiefer to still be a freeway when it's just a block away from Central Expressway. I think we can do more on this corridor. And Kiefer does not need to carry the traffic volumes that it is capable of sustaining right now. It doesn't carry those. I think as we come out of the pandemic, it's not going to. And with this many more people living there, it's really just imperative to make it a better walking and biking experience. So thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. Next, we have Carl. Carl, I will send you a request, so please unmute yourself. Once you are done speaking, please lower your hand. You will have 3 minutes to speak. I will share the timer now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I'd like to point out a bicycle hazard in accessing the Caltrain station from Willow going north from Reed. I have a image if I can share my screen, but I can also describe it. So the problem is that Willow, there's a turn that goes under the Lawrence Bridge, and then it turns again into French. But that's a blind curve, and in order to access the station, you have to cross the traffic there. So you really need if there's a bike lane in the right side on Willow, you really need a left turn lane around that curb where you can enter the station. Or else you'll need a two-way bike lane on the west side of that street. So, because if you cross, you could be hit by a car coming around the curve that you can't see. And if you go around the curve, then you could be hit by a car from Willow. So I don't know what plans there are to address that. The other issue is that there are railroad tracks right next to the entryway curb on the sidewalk there. And that's kind of a hazard for the bumps that you have to ride over. So I just wanted to point out those hazards and hope that the bike commission investigates that and takes that into account. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Carl.
Thank you for your comment. Appreciate it, comments from someone who actually works in the area and accesses it on a regular basis. That being the end of public comments, and that's the end of the presentation. Again, thank you, Mr. Schroeder, for the presentation and the update. I'm not certain there's any action required on behalf of the BPAC for this specific presentation, so.
No, but thank you for all of your comments and from the members of the public. So we'll be including that in our record and the EIR. So thank you for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you again. At this point in time, if I may, I would like to propose I was going to say 10-minute, but right now we're looking at a 9-minute break. And then resume at 8:30 if that's possible. Do we have any objections to that? Okay, then we will have a break until 8:30 and see you all back then. Okay, do we have everybody back? I see 3 faces. There we go. We're just waiting for Commissioner Dove. Oh, there she is. Okay. All right. So
Is Commissioner Scott back also? Swale back also?
yeah, well, his name is there, so I don't see his face though. Should we wait until we see faces?
Yeah, I think they might not be back yet.
Okay.
Mhm.
We'll give them another minute. Actually, we won't have a quorum unless one of them shows up. There we go.
I'm back.
Okay. We have a quorum now, so I will resume. Thank you. Calling again to order the Sunnyvale Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission from our brief recess. As a reminder to the public, please raise your digital hand or dial *9 on the telephone if you wish to address the BPAC on a topic that's not on tonight's agenda. City staff will ask you to unmute your microphone when it's your turn to address this BPAC. At this point, I believe we are on the oral communication part of the calendar. And this provides an opportunity for the members of the public to address the Sunnyvale Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission on items not listed on the agenda.
Chair Melman,
Yes.
could you adjust your headset thing? It's hard to
Can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Sorry, yeah, I project really well, so usually people don't have problems hearing me, but apparently my mic was just out of cue. So we are on the oral communications portion of the tonight's meeting. We are limited to 15 minutes and with a maximum of up to 3 minutes per speaker. Please note that the Brown Act does not allow the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission to take action on an item not listed on the agenda. And if you wish to address the BPAC, please refer to the notice at the beginning of this agenda, where you are limited to 1 appearance during this section. Do we have any members of the public wishing to address the BPAC for oral communications?
We currently do not see any raised hands from the public.
Okay, as Richard would say, going once, going twice. We are closing the oral communications section of the meeting. Now we move on to the consent calendar. We are looking at item 210654, which is approval of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission meeting minutes of May 20th, 2021. Do we have anybody who wishes to approve? Put the motion forward to approve the meeting minutes for May of 2021.
I will make a motion to approve meeting minutes.
And this is Tim Wheel, second.
Thank you. Let me try that again. Noted and seconded. Hang on a second. I lost my track on my script here. So city staff, I guess we will conduct a random order voice vote.
Commissioner Cordes is absent. Commissioner Owie?
Just before we go to that, I see 1 raised hand. I think there might be discussion from Daniel Hafman.
Oh, Commissioner
Yes.
Hafman.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for
Commissioner
noting
White.
that, Commissioner Wee.
Commissioner Wee. Yes, I had actually a couple things on there. On page 9 of these notes of the last month's agenda or notes, yeah, there, Commissioner Mellinger or Chair Mellinger was referred to as Commissioner Mellinger. And that was on page 9 in 2 places. And then Vice Chair Melman, I think, adjourned the meeting last time, right? You ran the meeting last time?
Yeah, so Commissioner Chair Mellinger was remotely calling in from 29 Palms, I think, or something. And so he was not chairing the meeting. So he was not acting as chairperson. So I think that's why I don't know if within the context of the meeting minutes, if he would still be considered chairperson if he was not acting in that capacity.
Okay, but it also said that he adjourned the meeting, and I think you actually adjourned.
I adjourned it, yes. So if that could be corrected.
Now, elsewhere in the minutes, he is referred to as Chair Mellinger. But on page 9, he was referred to as Commissioner Mellinger in 2 places. On page 9 of the minutes, not of the whole package.
So if we could have correction of that, I think I'm not certain, not being an expert on parliamentary thing, but I guess given the fact that we would have him referred to consistently in whatever capacity he is serving at the time of the meeting, throughout the meeting minutes, that would be fine. So Commissioner Swale, do you approve these? You have your hand raised. Do you wish to speak? I was going to say.
Yes, so with an amended motion pursuant to the aforementioned amendment by Commissioner Hafman, I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the prior BPAC meeting. Thank you.
Commissioner Wee, do you second the amendment,
Yes.
the amended motion?
Yes, I accept the amended motion.
Thank you. Now, with those changes in mind, if city staff could please conduct a random order voice vote on those, on the meeting minutes with the amended changes.
So I'm going to start with Commissioner Cordes, who's absent. Next will be Commissioner Owie.
Aye.
Commissioner Dave.
Aye.
Commissioner Swale.
Aye.
Chair Mellinger is also absent today. Vice Chair Melman.
Aye.
Commissioner Hafman.
Aye.
So the results was carried out with 5 yes and 2 absent.
So noted. Now we move on to the public hearing general business. Again, if you wish to speak at the public hearing general business item, please refer to the notice at the beginning of the agenda. Each speaker is limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. Is there a staff report on the first item that we have, standing item 210670, which is simplify sidewalk riding ordinance, a potential study issue?
So this study issue form was submitted by Commissioner Owie, related to looking into some ordinances that the city has and try to make try to simplify it. And so I'm going to pass it to Commissioner Owie to describe some of the elements within what he's proposing.
Thank you, Ms. Hang. Yeah, the current ordinance, which is 10.56.140, riding on sidewalks and overhead pedestrian crossings prohibited, it's overly long and overly confusing with double and triple negatives, if you will, as you read through it. So it's like, you shall not do this, you shall not do that, notwithstanding, but except again. So it's very hard to read. And also, it does not account for all of the mobility devices we have. So it does address pedestrians, does address bicycles, but doesn't address all of these other options that people have that are, people sometimes want to ride on sidewalks. And additionally, there are a number of cases where it is advantageous for cyclists to ride on the sidewalk to avoid certain pretty weird traffic situations. And there is a stipulation right at the end saying any individual regardless of age may ride a bicycle on a sidewalk if riding upon the adjacent street would place the cyclist in an unsafe situation. Rather than all of that verbiage, I was in consultation with some other folks. On a sidewalk, we're really trying to make sure it is safe for pedestrians. They're prioritized on a sidewalk. Yet other users can use it if they keep their speed under control and if they yield to pedestrians. So I was proposing that the staff study on alternative wording that could simplify it, something similar to any person may ride their electric or human-powered personal mobility device, bicycle, skate, skateboard, scooter, etc., upon any sidewalk or pedestrian crossing, as long as they exercise due care, do not exceed 7 miles per hour, and give pedestrians the right of way riders must use bicycle or road facilities if they exceed 7 miles per hour. And that's basically the speed of a jog. So if you're walking, you're like 3 to 4 miles an hour. If you're jogging, you're 5 to 7. If you're running, you're typically 8 to 10 or maybe faster. So, you know, runners are still, they're still pedestrians. They're still on the sidewalk. But then if you have wheels, or if you have this mobility device that allows you to go faster, and there are some wheelchairs, for instance, although most motorized wheelchairs do go slower, there's some of them are getting faster because they're getting more powerful batteries, and some people like speed. It would be really handy to basically have a new ordinance that covers all of these circumstances and allow people to share the sidewalk appropriately, with pedestrians being prioritized. And again, to simplify, if you take a look at 1056-140 and try reading through it, it's not all that long, but it is very confusing with lots of exceptions and re-exceptions, where children and older people can ride. And rather than go through all the details of all of that, as long as all of them stay slower on sidewalks, regardless of age, I think that is much safer. And if they're able to go faster, regardless of age, stick to the road. So that is the nugget of the study issue, to figure out how we could word this to be clearer and also apply and be future-proofed with all of these other devices that show up on our street or on our sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Mellinger, Chair Melman, I would like Vice Chair Melman, I would like to add a couple of staff comments regarding
Certainly.
this proposed study issue. So we just want to point out that according to the California Vehicle Code, there are actually different state laws that regulate the different types of mobility devices. So there's different laws for most of the devices. And also the city can only adopt local ordinances that are not already regulated or prohibited by state laws.
So if I may ask staff a question then, does the city ordinance address any issues that are not otherwise addressed in state law?
That would be part of the study issue, wouldn't it? They would investigate that to figure it out.
Yeah, because this might be an ordinance which is unneeded if it's already addressed by state law.
Correct. So under the brief scope that the staff put together, that's one of the things that we would recommend to include is a review of existing state laws, municipal code, and adopted ordinances to identify what's currently mandated by state law and what kind of local ordinances can be adopted.
Okay. Thank you for that. I would say, Commissioner Wee, from my own personal experience, and this is before I recognize Commissioner Hafman, 5 miles an hour is a very brisk run for me. Okay. 7 miles an hour, 7 to 10 miles an hour is actually faster than most people. That would be like a marathon runner. It would be, somebody breaking the 7-minute mile or whatever it is. So, 10-mile-an-hour runner is very fast. So I would probably say on a sidewalk, it should be like 5 miles an hour would be the top speed limit. That would be my only suggestion, period, for anybody.
And that actually could be part of the study issue as well, as staff could verify, is 7 miles an hour the right speed? Is 5 miles an hour the right speed? Pick a speed so that bicyclists can go slowly mixed with, pedestrians.
Right.
But not endanger them. So that actually would be part of the study issue also, is what speed should be the speed limit be.
Okay, Commissioner Hafman, you wish to speak?
Yes, that was basically going to be my comment. I don't think we should specify in the study issue a speed. If I got hit by an electric bicycle because of the weight of the battery and everything, hit me at 7 miles an hour, I'd probably get pretty seriously injured. And in fact, the electric bicycles on streets is something that really bothers me, no matter what speed they're going, unless they're walking, just because of the weight that's involved. And there may be some other devices that's getting like that. Now, I'm not saying don't do the study issue. I'm saying let's don't specify a speed limit and really focus on what's safe for pedestrians, because pedestrians are the primary users of sidewalks. The other comment related to this is if a runner is running on a sidewalk, you can very quickly stop if you're running, or you can very quickly switch directions. If somebody walking ahead of you decides to make an immediate right turn or left turn or whatever. But if you're on a bicycle, you don't have that degree of mobility. And so that's another consideration in doing this study issue. But my main thing was, let's take the 7 miles per hour out and say a safe speed for pedestrians. Thank you.
One note on that is that this is just an example. It says something like, so just a consideration. It's not, doesn't stipulate that it has to be any of that wording at all that I just mentioned. That's all up for staff to evaluate and figure out what the right answer is.
So Commissioner Hafman, are you proposing an amendment to this study issue in the language of that paragraph?
Yeah, if we can modify that, yes, I propose we say a safe speed for pedestrians, as opposed to specifying a miles per hour.
Would you accept and replace the 7 with an X with, staff to determine what that X is to be a safe speed?
That's a fine way to say it. Include in there safety for pedestrians.
So the wording is, any person may ride their electric or human-powered personal mobility device, et cetera, upon any sidewalk or pedestrian crossing, as long as they exercise due care, do not exceed XXX mph, speed to be determined by staff analysis, and give pedestrians the right of way.
Yeah, and in fact, the entire wording of this whole thing, that's up to staff to figure out.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all
okay.
up, yeah.
Yeah, because the way you have it is that you would revise and simplify the current ordinance, et cetera.
Exactly.
It sounds like you're actually specifying what you want the ordinance to state, rather than we wish to, as an example.
Yeah, my intent was as an example, and have staff actually figure out what the exact wording would be of the entire ordinance.
Okay, so then I would suggest that we would like to revise and simplify the current ordinance as given in the following example for clarity.
So if this were to move forward, staff will prepare a scope that will include what the study will involve.
Okay.
So that would be, like we could include, one of the things we could include is in the evaluation of the appropriate speed or safe speed.
Yes.
Okay, that would be fine.
I would just say appropriate speed for pedestrian safety.
Got it.
Fair enough. Do we have to have someone other than the proposed the study? I want to say this, the person proposing the study. Do we have to have anybody else approve the changes other than the person who proposed the study issue?
So I think what we are trying to do is to basically discuss what should also be included in as part of the study.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
So Lillian, you have enough information now to modify the scope to include that speed question?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So we do need, so if after all the commissioners have a chance to discuss this, then we would need to have a vote to vote whether we want to place this onto the proposed study issue list or not.
Right. So I was getting to that. So I'm assuming, do we have any more? We have no further questions or feedback from any other commissioners?
I have one other comment actually about what's being simplified here. There's actually in the current ordinance, there's stipulation to not be able to ride side by side if you're in bikes. And I'd rather just take that out. And again, just as long as you're safe and yield to pedestrians, if no one's around, it should be fine to ride side by side because it's just more like it's like pedestrians walk side by side. But when pedestrians encounter other people on the sidewalk, if they need to, they single up, and cyclists should also single up again to yield to pedestrians. So I think it's a little overly prescriptive to say thou shalt only ride single file if you're all riding slowly, so that you can be social with whoever you're riding with. And as our sidewalks continue to evolve and hopefully they get much wider, then it will be easier. Admittedly, if it's narrow, then they should single up. But again, if they ride with due care and they yield to pedestrians, then they will naturally single up. I don't think we actually have to stipulate that. So I didn't call that out in my elements, but that's one of the complications in the current ordinance.
Okay, so I think that would be part of the staff study issue of the current ordinance and how it's written, and then what proposed changes we would have. So yes.
Yeah, hopefully we'll reduce the current ordinance, which is like 15 lines, to like 3 or 4, which is like in the as the like.
Yes, and I almost wish there was an ordinance from the state that requires that all city ordinance be at a 5th grade reading level so that they would be understandable to all persons. But such as this. So if we have no further comments or feedback from the board members or commissioners, since we remain in a virtual setting, I will ask the public to use the virtual raise hand feature or *9 on the telephone to indicate if they wish to speak. City staff will ask you to unmute your microphone when it is your turn to address the BPAC. City staff, do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on this item?
I do not see any raised hands at the moment.
Okay, going once, going twice. Closed for public discussion on this item. I will now ask for a discussion or a motion from my colleagues. If there, we kind of already jumped the gun on that, I guess. But do we have any further motion or discussion from my colleagues?
I'll make a motion to add this to our proposed study issue list.
Do we have a second on that?
I will second the motion.
And that was Commissioner Swale. I'm sorry, I didn't see who spoke. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, please identify yourself if you're seconding, just because I don't necessarily see who was speaking at the time. Time lags. Okay. So noted and seconded. City staff, please conduct a random order voice vote on adding the proposed study issue regarding simplification of sidewalk riding ordinance. Agenda item 210670.
Commissioner Darvey,
Oh, aye.
Commissioner Swale,
Aye.
Commissioner Haveman,
Aye.
Chair Mellinger is absent. Commissioner Cordes is also absent. Vice Chair Melman,
Aye.
Commissioner Owie.
Aye.
The results was carried out by 5 yes and 2 absent.
Okay. Moving on to the next item. We have item 210671, which is the 2022 proposed study issues. I'm bringing that up here.
This is a ongoing list that we.
Yeah, I think this is more of an almost informational only item. I don't, do we have to do anything with regards to the proposed study issues for 2022? Are we ranking them at this point in time?
No, we're not. We should be ranking them in September.
Okay, so at this point, this is more almost an informational issue, I would say. Oops, sorry, I just closed the wrong thing. Let me bring that up again. Sorry. This is what happens when you have too many windows. Do we have a staff report on this item?
No, we do not.
Okay, sorry. I'm like, okay. Do we have any questions or feedback from any of our board members on this item? Oh, we have a couple hands raised. I'm going to go with Commissioner Haveman first.
Forgot to lower my hand before.
Oh, okay. Then I will skip you, Commissioner Haveman. Please lower your hand. And Commissioner Wee, you had a comment. or a question?
Yes, I have a comment on the roll-in or fully enclosed bike parking ordinance. One piece of that, I'm not sure if it really comes out in the summary description, is when you roll in, it's not necessarily parking the bike ever. Because if you're using it as your shopping device, then you're actually, it stays with you and it's not actually being parked. And I wanted to make sure that that was clear in the description of the study issue, that it wasn't just about parking, but just allowing bikes inside and using them as a cart, or, you know, I'm not quite sure how to author that, but it isn't quite captured in this. It just seems to see you're parking it only inside, and that's not the only case, the only use case.
I think it needs an Oxford comma, roll in, comma, or fully enclosed, roll in, bike access or fully enclosed bike parking. How's that?
Or it's, yeah, in the description, in the summary of scope. It needs a little bit of wording. I'm not quite sure how to word this, so that in any case, it's not just for indoor public bike storage, but just allowing the bike in with the customer or with the person, so that it's not necessarily parked inside. Does that make sense, Lillian?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's my only comment. Thank you.
So you're not specifying a specific language change at this point. You're requesting clarification in the wording on the summary of scope.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I don't think that requires necessarily a vote or anything like that, Lillian. It's just a request for clarification.
Yeah, I think clarification is fine. We don't need to vote.
Okay, then I will. So at this point, I guess, do we have any questions or feedback from the public on this item, which is 210671 proposed study issues? I think at this point, seeing no feedback or questions or raised hands from the public, we will close that. Hang on a second. Keep clicking the wrong thing. My apologies. All right. Let me go back to my script. That takes care of the standing items. Now we move on to the non-agenda items and comments. Do we have any? I will ask my colleagues to use the virtual raise hand feature to indicate that they wish to speak. Do we have any non-agenda items or comments from the board members or commissioners? Commissioner Wee.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few. One, Silicon Valley Bike Summit is coming up on August 12th and 13th. Each of those days, the sessions will be from 9 to noon, but there'll be optional breakfast and lunch networking times. So it's over 2 days, but it's just for the morning. It's a great opportunity for professionals, elected, appointed, such as us, and others to learn more about the latest in bicycling facilities and laws and trends in Silicon Valley. That's the Silicon Valley Bike Summit, again, August 12th and 13th, run by the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition. Go to bikesiliconvalley.org, and you can click on the summit link there. Second item was, it was great to see Mr. Ng get his bikes fixed at the free bike repair clinic this past weekend.
Haha.
Yes. So now we can see him and his kids ride around safely. A third item, yeah, thanks Dennis for coming by. It was great seeing you. There is a Bike2Vist forums that are happening on a regular basis, and they had a really interesting discussion on bike plans where Mountain View staff, consulting firm, a Burlingame council member, and BPAC member from Santa Clara chimed in and discussed bike plans and their process. And it was interesting to hear that the recommended cadence for doing bike plans these days is at 5 years, not 10 years. And actually, it was ended up being 14 years in our case, because it was like 2006, we had one bike plan, and then 2020, we finally got to finishing our revised bike plan. And so at some point, it would be nice to move our cadence to a little bit faster than every 14 years and actually make it more like 5 years. There's still a lot of change happening, and a lot of people are getting used to climate, or want to do more about climate change. and San Jose and several other cities are on a 5-year cadence where they're revisiting their plans. So it's not as huge an effort, a heavy lift. And this had been proposed by former Commissioner Cordes as well, to go to a slightly faster cadence so we can get changes adapted more quickly. So that's just a FYI and something that I hope staff can consider in the future. One other thing I hope we can do more in our city is get the city manager and Chip and Lillian and Dennis, have all of us go on rides on their infrastructure that we are putting in place. I think as we get more familiar, if we have staff circulating and using a lot of our infrastructure, they'll give more appreciation for how we can improve it. Let's see. I had a question for staff on any news on when we'll go back to in-person meetings, preferably also with people to attend online. I was just curious what the timeline looks like, if we're going to stay with this virtual setting for the next like 3 or 4 months, or if you foresee us actually starting to have in-person meetings as people start coming back into the offices. That's a question. I have 2 questions about the upcoming Homestead agenda item, Homestead full-time bike lane study. I was curious if will the Homestead full-time bike lane study be conducted differently this time than in the past? If so, how so? Will the city survey the parking utilization on cross streets and on people's driveways? And the second sort of space is at the September BPAC meeting, where this is coming back to be discussed as an agenda item. Is this going to be an information only item and presentation at that time, or will it be also a public input feedback opportunity in September when the Homestead piece comes back to us? And that's it for me.
I'm surprised you didn't mention the MTC.
Oh, well, there's an opportunity. Okay, I'll mention that also. There's an opportunity for someone on BPAC or other member of the public to join an MTC advisory committee or commission. I forget exactly the term. They're accepting nominations right now, and anyone is eligible. And they give a stipend to travel. Right now they're doing it virtually, but when they do go back to in person, it's like $50 per meeting, so that you can pay for your transportation to get to the meeting and back.
If I might add to that, I would say that MTC stands for the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which covers the entire Bay Area, and they would be the applications will be accepted through August 1st, 2021, and you have to be willing to serve a 4-year term, scheduled to begin in January 2022 and to end in December 2025. And committee meetings are held on the second Wednesday of the month in the afternoon. So that is your only commitment, other than whatever else you wish to get involved with on that. Does any other commissioner have any additional comments? I don't see any raised hands, so I'll ask if staff has any comments at this time.
Yes, let's see. So in response to Commissioner Oi's couple of questions, in terms of in-person, hosting board and commission meetings in person, the governor just recently signed a updated executive order to set an expiration date on the provision regarding doing teleconference and the Brown Act, and that would expire on September 30th and of this year. So currently, city staff is working with City Council to try to determine how we can, when we would be moving, having in-person meeting again, whether it would be hybrid or whether it will be all in person. So that's some of the discussion that staff is currently having with City Council.
I would hope we would move to a hybrid model, only because I think it really encourages more public participation. We've had more people actually comment on BPAC issues during the last 15 months than we have during the entire couple years I've been serving, I think. So I really like the fact that we enable people to outreach more without having to physically travel to the location.
And then let's see, regarding Homestead, road full-time bike lane study. So currently we actually have not started on the project yet. We are working with our finance department to try to solicitate. We're working with that process. We haven't started solicit consultants to submit a proposal yet. But then we will be, as part of the study, we will be collecting parking occupancy data, not only on Homestead, but also on some of the cross streets as well.
And on driveways as well?
Driveway, I'll have to take a look at it again to see if we're including driveway counts or not.
I think Mr. Ng has something to say on that. I see his head nodding.
I just wanted to add that, yes, it will include that. It'll be consistent with what we did for the Maud Avenue study in looking at driveways, and then also on all the other recent parking studies that we've done.
Thank you.
So with that said, likely we will not be presenting Homestead in September. We probably would be looking in a later date once we have a consultant on board, and once they actually start working on the project.
And that will be a feedback, a public forum?
It would be, we haven't decided what, yeah, it would be a feedback public forum. So we'll have to take a look at the scope to understand, and we'll work with the project team to try to identify when's the best time to present to the BPAC.
Thank you.
Do you have a rough schedule on how that's going to unfold?
Currently, we do not. We will have a better idea once we have a consultant on board.
I apologize for the cattail.
Okay, so other comments that I have. So we have notified that we were notified that the MTC staff has updated their funding recommendation for the Safe and Seamless Mobility Quick Strike program. So previously we were informed that both of our projects were not did not make it onto the MTC staff recommendation list. However, I believe they were able to find additional funding. So the Safe Route, the Sunnyvale Bicycle Pedestrian Safe Route to School Safety Improvement Project is now on the recommended project list. It will be brought to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission on June 23rd for approval.
Nice work.
With the Commission's approval, Sunnyvale will receive a grant funding amount of $1.9 million for the construction of bike path safe route to school quick build improvements in various parts of the city.
Nice.
And then we also have started construction on Homestead Road near the Homestead High School. We are anticipating that construction will be completed by August or September of this year. And as part of this project, we are going to be installing a pedestrian scramble signal at the intersection of Mary and Homestead, and it will be operated. It will operate with that scramble facing during the school morning and afternoon peak hours.
I think that's our first scramble signal, isn't it, in the city?
It is.
Yeah, cool.
It will be. So we also got an update from Caltrain that they have recently installed 16 new bike e-lockers at both the Lawrence station, the Lawrence Caltrain station, and the Sunnyvale Caltrain stations. The e-lockers are first come, first serve, and the standard rate is 5 cents per hour, with night and weekend rates at 2 cents per hour. More information about setting up an account is available at www.bikelink.org. And if you sign up for the BikeLink account and link it to your Clipper card, you will get a $5 credit toward your future e-bike parking at Caltrain stations. And with that, I think that's all. Oh, no, I still have two more. So, as mentioned earlier, Commissioner Dave is reappointed as a BPAC commissioner for the term starting on July 1st, 2021, and her term will end on June 30th, 2025. And we will have one new BPAC commissioner joining us starting in July. His name is, I might be mispronouncing it, Mihi Paradka. And again, he also has a 4-year term between 2021 and 2025.
Nice.
So we will have one vacancy, and City Clerk's office will include this vacancy in the next round of recruitment for appointment on August 31st. And that concludes staff comments.
Thank you, staff. I appreciate that. Okay, so moving on, we only have the information only report items. I don't think we necessarily have to comment on any of those.
Chair Mellon, may I just make a
Yes.
couple comments on
Certainly.
Ms. Zhang's comments? Thank you so much for doing the pedestrian scramble. I suggested that right when I got on the BPAC, when I first joined it 4 years ago, and sort of got shut down instantly. It's like not possible. And I'm very happy to see that move forward. And I just saw that they were redoing that intersection. I saw some things torn up there, and I was curious if that was in process. So thank you for that update. That's very helpful.
It'll be nice to see how it works out in practice when it's implemented. Did you have any further comments, Commissioner Ray?
That was the only one. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So for further on the agenda, we only have information only report items. I don't believe these are necessarily read out loud. He's looking, but we have the first one is the 210672, which is the annual work plan. Any comments or discussion on that from commissioners? Seeing none, the next is the active item list 210673 for June 2021. Any comments or questions on that from commissioners? Okay, next item is 210674, which is the 2021 deferred study issues. And then the last one is 21. I'm sorry.
Sorry, can you give me a second to look at the deferred? Hold on.
Certainly, Commissioner Dave. Although I believe these are just information only reports, so they're not necessarily, although they're on the agenda.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yeah. And then the last one is the 2021 utility insert stuffer. Hang on a second. Let me check that out for a second. I'm just blanking on that for a moment. Sorry.
Look at that great picture.
Oh, yeah. That looks good. I like that. And it's colorful. I'm liking it. Not just because our picture's on there, but because we got the downtown Murphy Avenue sign over there. And we have a QR code. Yay. Looks good. Congratulations, staff, on a very nice layout. Okay, at this point.
I have my hand up. I don't know if you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Haefman. I don't always see the little hands, so it depends on what I have open.
Yeah, no problem. Page 2, though, I did have a comment on the 40-mile-per-hour sign. Is it possible to reverse the purple and red symbols? The 9 that get killed should be red, and the purple should be the one that got lucky and was not killed. Because red usually means bad things. So when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, only one person gets killed?
That is true.
So, Ms. Sang, I don't know if you can reverse the colors on that, but I sure wish you would.
I'll have to check with our with other staff to see what the timing is.
You mean it might have already gone to the printer for proofing?
Correct.
Okay, so we've already done the final review on this, huh? I didn't remember
Yeah.
seeing that.
Well, we had talked about what we wanted on there and the content. So on the last meeting minutes. And I remember the photo shoot.
Yes, I remember we talked about that stuff. I didn't remember the discussion of the colors, which we probably
No.
didn't do because we didn't think about it. But if you could possibly change it, because
Yeah, I will have to check on the timing because they might have been sent off already.
okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that's the end of our agenda at this point. Do any further comments from, I should say, any comments from staff on the information only report items? And I don't believe we necessarily solicit comments from the public on information only report items. So at this point, I guess we would adjourn the meeting of this Sunnyvale Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission is officially adjourned at 9:15 p.m. And I would like to thank everyone for your participation in tonight's meeting. And I don't have a gavel, so you'll just have to imagine the sound.
And thank you, Commissioner Swale.
Yes, yes. And I hope Commissioner Dave cools off soon. She looks like she's going to be a puddle by the end of the evening.